Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is season 5, episode, I don't know, zero point 0.5. What do you think? Today is Tuesday, December 5th, 2017. We like to sort of number the episodes based on what week of the season it is. So episode 1 will be the first one after week 1, which is next week. So
we did a
we already had episode 0 a little while ago.
So this is 0.05?
0.5, I think, is what we'll go with.
All right. Semantic version always works.
Yeah. My name is Graham Perro. With me today is Tyler Fitch. Melissa is under the weather and not feeling well, so she wasn't able to join us tonight. I'm fighting a bit of a cold myself, so I'm hoping not to cough or sniff into the microphone too often. Bunch of stuff to talk about. We've got some more retirements that have been announced recently. One trade, free agent signings, and of course the rosters were announced last week. A bunch of injuries, a couple of new teams that we kind of knew about anyway, a new digital streaming platform that was just announced this morning, which we have almost no information on, but we'll talk about it briefly anyway. And we'll get into our predictions for the upcoming season and see what's going on there. We will start with the retirements. We went over a few in the previous episode, but since then we've had a bunch more. We'll just list them quickly. From the Rock, we have Rob Marshall and Jeff Gilbert. From the Black Wolves, we have Chad Culp. From the Bandits, Anthony Cosmo. From the Georgia Swarm, Mitch Belisle. And not sure about this last one, and that's from the Vancouver Stealth, John Lintz. He was announced, or it was announced, to be not playing this season, and he was going to be the defensive coach of the team, officially retiring. And then the next day after that announcement, he was officially added to the retired list.
That makes me wonder if there's some league requirement that says, by the way, if you want to coach, you need to officially be retired so it doesn't get confusing or something. That's my first guess, is like there's some technicality along the lines of, oh, you want to be behind the bench, but you're not a player? Well, you need, or you are a player, but you're not a player. You need to be retired, and then we'll let you coach. I don't know.
Do you remember what happened with Kyle Sorensen? He wasn't coaching. He was like assistant GM or scout or something, I think.
He started off the first third of that year as an official like defensive coordinator, coach person. And I don't know how that, if there was some confusion there that led to this difference, or if I'm totally making up the reason that transaction happened a day later or not. We should ask somebody at the league officially. That's just my best guess.
There was an interview with him, with Lintz, on Off the Crossbar a week or two after this announcement, and he never mentioned anything about retiring. He did say that he hoped to play again on Sunday, so yeah it does kind of sound like it was a just that he can't be on the holdout list for this reason or that reason, or they have other people on that list that they want to keep there.
Ooh, yeah.
So they added him to the retired list.
There could be a maximum number of people on the holdout list that they're trying to retain the rights to, so they had to move them around even further.
It kind of sounds to me like if there's a list called the retired list, it shouldn't be something that you're allowed to come off of. But
it shouldn't be something that
athletes have unretired. So
yeah, it shouldn't be something where a team could put you there and retain your rights. It seems like you should become basically a free agent if you choose to be on the retired list versus the holdout of some specific team. Don't know.
So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens to John Lintz next season.
Yeah.
He did say, like I said, that he's just physically not able to play this year, and he hopes to play again in the future. So it could be that there's some physical issue with his knee or his ankle or his elbow or whatever the problem is.
Yeah.
And if he's never able to play again, then it's kind of a non-issue. But hopefully we'll see him back on the floor.
Yep. Also on that list there you had was Anthony Cosmo. That's a sad one for my wife and I because he was our first goalie. In the NLL, we always
San Jose.
Sat right in the corner, and Cosmo was our guy. And he's always good, but he also was never great. Like, he never won an NL title aside from being the backup to Bob Watson. So he couldn't get a team over that hump. In the summer, he sure could. He won multiple Man Cups. But it was just something was a little bit different or never clicked for him in the NLL, and he never got that title as a starter. And that, I think that'll kind of hangs over his career, because as a player, you never saw him win a title, but you know that he has one. So it's kind of like he's got a ring, but he doesn't. But he was always great. There weren't a ton of fans in San Jose, so he always knew us. And we would, my wife and I would travel to games for like vacations. Like, oh, they're playing in Orlando, we'll go to Orlando. Like, he's already gone by then. But he knew us. We went to Boston to go watch the Stealth play, and he was there. He's like, hey, like, he knew us. And he's very kind, great guy. So we're sad to see him go, but at least he'll still be around the league, as he's the goalie coach for the Bandits now. So he's not fully gone. And maybe if they go to Vancouver, we'll go try and catch a game and see him again.
Yeah, Hall of Fame goalie.
Yeah.
I think no question there. Like you said, he didn't win a championship, but there's a lot of great players who didn't win championships, and a lot of questionable players who did. So it's not really
he's the all-time NLL saves leader, I believe. So he had a lasting and outstanding career. Like, he was always productive when he was in.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I remember when I started as a Rock fan back in 2001, he was the backup goalie for Bob Watson for, I think, the first 3 years. And then in 2004, he was traded out west. And that whole time, and we as Rock fans had every confidence that if Watson had a bad game for whatever reason, you could bring Cosmo in and he would shut him down. And yeah, there was never a question that at some point he was going to be, we assumed he was going to be the next Rock goalie after Watson retired. Obviously, that trade to San Jose negated that, but there was still no question that he was going to be a very solid starting goaltender in the league, and he was for the next 13 years.
Yep.
So, all right, there was one trade in the last couple of weeks, not a major one, but during training camp, Brodie McDonald was traded from the Swarm to the Stealth for a 5th-round pick in the 2020 draft, so not even for a couple of years. This is a bit weird in that he then joined 4 other goalies for the battle to be the goalie for the Stealth, which is a little weird considering what Belanger did last year. You would assume he was the number one. And since the Stealth went out of their way to acquire McDonald, it seems unlikely that they were going to trade for him just to let him compete. So it was kind of, in my mind, a foregone conclusion. It was going to be Belanger and McDonald as the 2 Stealth goalies this year, and that's what it turned out to be. Now, maybe the Swarm drove that trade rather than the Stealth, and they just said, okay, well, we'll give you a draft pick. Is a BC guy, so he's
a inland BC guy. Like, he has to travel far just to get to an airport. Like, he's an hour east, at least an hour east of Langley. So, like, and then it's another hour out to the airport, and so his travel is just ridiculous to get to Atlanta.
Yeah, I think somebody was saying he probably travels more than anybody else, especially as a backup goaltender. So when you're traveling across the country every weekend and in all probability not playing, that's got to take its toll after a while. So the fact that he's in Vancouver for half of his games is going to really help him, I imagine.
Yeah, the thought in my mind is, because of that travel, like, he was always going to end up in Vancouver if he was going to go anywhere. Maybe Calgary, but they're also pretty stacked with young goalies. Nothing to worry about this time. And it was the last week before training camp started that this trade happened. So I think he hit a point where I was like, I love playing lacrosse, but I'm not traveling to Atlanta constantly, or Georgia, you know. And he probably said, I'm not going to report. And they said, well, we're not going to let you go for free, for nothing. Like, you're a goalie capable of playing in this league. We can't give you up for nothing. And so the Stealth had to like pony up a 5th-round pick to get a guy that otherwise maybe sit there until his contract and he became a free agent, some weird thing. I don't know. But that's my guess is he probably wasn't going to report. Like he's been out there for 2 years already, and he's earned all the status he can earn on the airline, and he's good to go.
Yeah, hard to blame him.
Yeah.
All right. So that was really the only trade. The other interesting movement was Andrew Suter being cut by the Nighthawks and immediately being signed by the Stealth. And when I say immediately, I mean immediately. I think he was unemployed for less than 12 hours.
Like 5 hours?
From the time he was cut. Yeah, it was not long at all. And from what I heard, he was contacted by like half the GMs in the league, and he decided on Vancouver. So hopefully he's got some, I want to say some left in the tank, which is hard to say about like a 28-year-old guy, but he's had more than his share of serious injuries.
Yeah, he's had 2 ACLs, I think, blowouts. So like that's a massive thing to come back from. But he's spent time in Victoria, so he knows the West Coast. Even more so, I guess he played his summer ball in Senior B for Coach Batley, and that was that one that he said on Twitter or on Stealth Classified. He said like, I wanted to play for Coach Batley more than I wanted to play for anybody else. That looked more appealing. Plus his friends from Victoria who were playing out on the West, like Dutchie and Corey Small and whatnot. So he had personal relationships, drove his choice. And it's funny when it's coming from a player going east to west. Usually they go home because of personal relationships. So they'll go back west if they're from the west, or back east if they're from the east. But it's nice to see a player have that ability to go where they wanted to go for the reasons they wanted to. And you should be happy about it, and a happy player should play better.
Absolutely. So that's a pretty good signing for the Stealth. What other changes do we have? We just have people dropping like flies. Jesse Gamble will not play for the Rock this year. That's due to work commitments. Turner Evans had knee surgery, so he's going to miss at least a couple of months. The Colorado Mammoth were pretty much devastated at the back end. Dan Coates and Cam Holding announcing, I believe, on consecutive days that they were both going to miss the entire season due to ACL problems.
That is a whole separate can of worms, because I don't know if you know, but they got hurt trying out for the Team Canada indoor team just to play in what's called the Heritage Cup, which is a little Saturday evening game between USA and Team USA and Team Canada indoor teams. And Canada decided to bring back the 2015 World Championship team, but their couple of players couldn't make it, so they had open tryouts. And these 2 people from the exact same team hurt their knees during the tryouts. And there's all sorts of implications. Like they don't get their NLL salary now. And the CLA, the Canadian Lacrosse Association, apparently doesn't have insurance where they would supplement that pay back to them. And so that's becoming a huge blow up between the CLA and the players. But the end result is, in the short term, the Mammoth defense is royally screwed, missing 2 of their probably top 5, 2 of their best players who are guaranteed starters on defense. And they lost them because those guys wanted to go play for the national team, which they had every right to and they should pursue when given the opportunity. So it's not good.
And just to add insult to injury, Bryce Sweeting was also injured about a week or 2 after that. I don't know if he's out for the season or just part of it, but need is more defenders on the what else do we have? Vancouver's losing some players as well for similar reasons. Jarrett Toll will be out of this season due to work commitments. I don't know if he's doing the firefighter thing, but a lot of players do that. They get their probation period as a firefighter, and they basically have to do that for a year or at least they can't play lacrosse, and we've seen a number of people doing that.
He's somewhere in Alberta,
apparently.
maybe Edmonton or something, but yeah, he's not right in Vancouver, but he's doing something. It's that or teaching, one of the two, whatever it is he couldn't pull out, getting all the time off required.
And I believe Garrett Billings is doing the same thing this year. Now it sounded like his tenure with the Stealth was over as of last year anyway, but that may explain why nobody's picked him up this year, because he wasn't able to play this year anyway. So he will be likely a free agent next year, and we'll see what happens there. John Harnett needs ACL surgery, and he will be out for at least part of, if not most of, the season. So that's another big loss on the Vancouver back end.
Yep.
Which, of course, Andrew Suter will help fill that need. Joel White and Jordan Hall will both miss the season for Georgia, again due to work commitments, and that's a big loss for their defensive core. And in other defensive news, Scott Carnegie was released by the Calgary Roughnecks and was added to the practice roster for the Mammoth, and it would not be surprising to see him show up on the active roster before too long.
Yep.
Another kind of an odd move, and maybe you know more about this, as this is your guy. Dan McRae is the new captain of the Roughnecks, succeeding Mike Carnegie.
Dan McRae,
who is still
the mighty Dan McRae, my favorite non-South player in the league. Mostly because
there you go.
That's my son's name, McRae. So Dan treats us right. Keep going.
So he is succeeding Mike Carnegie, who was the Roughnecks captain last year, who is still on the team. So you don't often see a captain change when the former captain didn't retire or get traded or just leave the team for whatever reason. I guess John Grant did it with the Mammoth a couple of years ago. And now Mike Carnegie's doing it with the Roughnecks. Now, Carnegie's also injured. I don't know how long for, but...
that's what I heard too.
I don't know if that had anything to do with it either, but...
I think that was the root of it. That's he might hand it back to him. Like, all right, you're back healthy. You can go be the captain again. But I don't think they really announce it in that way. They would say he's temporary. They would probably explicitly say he's temporarily wearing the C.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the Roughnecks announcement basically just said Carnegie was the captain and McRae is the captain, and he has the confidence of all the players, and they're happy to have him as a captain and all that sort of thing. There was nothing saying why this happened at all, but
they're doing it to mess with the refs, because the refs are used to Mike Carnegie being the captain. So whenever he walks up to talk to them during dead balls, they'll be like, "Oh, what do you got to say?" And like, "Wait a second, you don't have a C here now. You get out of here." And then the Roughnecks had that many more players able to go pester the ref, which doesn't seem very efficient or like a useful, a proper use of the captaincy. So I doubt that's actually the reason they're doing it.
And what else is going on in the league? There's a couple of new teams for next year. So the two teams, actually, both of them have been very active on social media. And I think this is kind of the reason that Nick Sakevich wanted to announce any new teams a full year in advance of them joining, like the actually playing games. So we have the San Diego Seals, and I think we talked about this in our previous episode. They announced their name and logo and everything a month or two ago at least. And then just last week we had the Philadelphia team announce their name, and that is hang on, let me check here. It is the Philadelphia Wings, in probably the worst kept secret in lacrosse for the last year.
Though they did rebrand the logo.
They do have a new logo. I think it looks sharp. I like it.
It's very 2010s, 20-teens versus 90s.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go with a throwback jersey every now and again with the big W and the older logo. But I do like the new logo. I think it looks pretty sharp.
I agree.
So we will have 11 teams next season. There was rumors of a third team joining, which was going to be either Halifax or Miami. At least that's what the rumors were. But they wanted all of that done and the contract signed and everything by the end of October, and it didn't happen. So if that team will be joining, it'll be another year after that.
I think that was the right choice there because of goalies. Like, you can find runners; they may not be great, but you can't find NLL caliber goalies that easily. So if they got time to let 4 goalies, or kind of 6 if people carry a practice goalie, and add them in the league next year, and you got some 6 more guys coming in to back up or be practice goalies around the league for a whole season next year, when you add teams in 2020, then should be from people who had spent the previous year being backups versus coming out of Canadian summer ball, which is close but not quite the same. So hopefully they can grow that goalie pool based on players with experience.
Right. The last thing we want to see is, having a back-to-back weekend and you're facing like Dylan Ward or Evan Kirk on the first night, and the next night you're facing a guy who not only wasn't in the league last year, he wasn't even good enough to make a practice roster last year, but we don't have any other goalies, so you're in. So yeah, having more time to get that kind of thing settled.
That'll make the fans of that team cringe, but the opponent's fans will have a good night.
True enough. There was an announcement this morning about CBS Sports Digital is a new partner for the NLL, and there's pretty much no details at all in the announcement. All it said was, quote, to stream live and on-demand games. That was it. There was nothing about all the games or some of the games or one a week or no other information at all. So hopefully that'll be coming in future. Well, hopefully in future days, because the season starts in about 3. So I did see a tweet from Tyson Geit confirming that NLL TV will continue this season, and that will be all the games. So for those of you who have signed up for that already, that's going to continue. So, and I don't know if CBS Sports is even available in Canada. That may be only for.
Yeah, that was the first question by most people. Hey, that CBS doesn't exist up here, right? And what can we do to watch these games? And there's too many. The press release basically asked way more questions than it answered, and that's not a great press release. But they got to get it out there. So. Good.
Yeah, it could be they just got the ink dry on the contract, and they basically said, we want to announce this now, and then we'll kind of work out the details later and announce them later, but we wanted to get the announcement done. Yeah. So
it seems promising to me because CBS Sports is a big enough group that they'll publish apps onto a Roku or Apple TV, or even maybe some smart TVs directly, or whatever. So having that means I can just go to my Apple TV and pull up a game and watch it, as opposed to pulling up on NLL Mobile or NLL TV on my computer and then pushing it to the Apple TV, or my phone and pushing it to Apple TV. So to get on the big screen, I think CBS Digital, it provides a better path than the developers of NLL TV have offered. So that's what I'm hoping to gain out of this partnership, is that I get a native app showing the games without having to run an extra computer or mobile device to push it to my big screen.
The other thing, and I was slightly wrong in saying that there was no other information in the announcement. I'm looking at the announcement right now. And the other thing it says is, in addition to streaming NLL games, CBS Sports Digital will promote NLL games across its digital platforms, creating an opportunity to expose the NLL to a new audience of sports fans. So presumably if you're watching a basketball game or a hockey game or some other thing, there will be ads for, hey, you want to check out this lacrosse game coming up tonight or tomorrow night or whenever it is. And that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, in general, there's nothing bad about this announcement. It means that the league is still able to have positive relationships with mainstream media or standard media providers, and the league will need that to grow the rest of the way. And so I'm happy that Sakevich can pull together these kind of meetings and partnerships for the fans and for the league over time.
All right. Didn't mention much about the Wings announcement. I guess the Seals announcement we had before. The Wings announcement is new. As we said, we have a new logo, but they do seem to be pushing their social media platforms on Facebook, and I've seen them on Twitter, and they're doing Instagram and all that stuff. They've had former Wings players tweeting stuff, not about for them, but about them, just saying it's great to see these guys back. I don't know if that's them arranging it or if Jake Berge and Kevin Crowley and various other former Wings just went on of their own volition and just said, hey, this is cool.
It seems weird that Crowley would when he actively plays for another team in the league. Like, it makes sense that Berge and Jeff Snyder, people who are out of the league, do that. But it's like, you could play for them again next year, Crowley, if you demanded it. So you better just keep kissing their butt.
The Black Wolves did, actually, in most of the teams, I think, tweeted a hey, welcome to the league, or sort of welcome back to the league. It's kind of cool. The Black Wolves did an interesting one where they basically just said, hey, looking forward to seeing you next year. And they posted a little 5-second video of what looks like a wolf eating a bird. So you see the wings disappearing into the mouth of the wolf, which I thought was pretty cool. It wasn't a black wolf, but it was a wolf. But in any case, and then of course you see tweets going, hey, did you know the Black Wolves used to be the Philadelphia Wings? Yeah, we knew that. Thanks.
Since when?
Yeah, look. So we're looking forward to having the Winds back in the league, and we're looking forward to the Seals on the West Coast. So that should be fun next year. Awesome, not awesome. We don't really have any awesome or not awesome things to talk about other than what we already did.
The summer is over. And so that's my awesome, is the summer is over. Or the winter is over. I don't know. Who tweeted it? Lacrosse All-Stars, I think, did the tweet that said, we made it. This last weekend was the last weekend without an NLL, MLL, college, summer ball game until next September when we hit the Man Cup. So it's only like 2 months now. You really have October, November off, and even then November has training camp, and then bingo, season starts. So it feels good.
Yeah, there's really only about 6 weeks of nothing.
Yeah.
And that's thanks to the NLL pushing the season back a little bit. So
good for them.
So it begins. So we will get on to our predictions for the upcoming season. And since we're all 0-0 on the season, well, I guess we'll start with our predictions for the standings and a couple of awards. And so since Melissa's not here, we'll go with Melissa first, and I'll just read hers out. We don't have any why she chose what she chose, but we'll just list what she picked for the standings and such. So starting in the East, she went with Georgia finishing first, New England second, Toronto third, Rochester fourth, and Buffalo fifth. In the West, we had the Rush in first, the Stealth in second, Calgary in third, and Colorado in fourth. And Melissa's never been, or not in the last couple of years anyway, hasn't been super optimistic about the Mammoth. And looks like she's picking them to finish last this year, or at least last in the West. So I guess before we move on, why don't we go over our standings? Tyler, you can go next. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, right? Okay. I had my button backwards. My picks in the East. I'm going to stay where we start the season, where we finished, and say to be the best, you got to beat the best. And I don't see anybody beating Georgia. They have a title to defend. Everyone will be gunning for them, but they simply reloaded. Like losing Jordan Hall and replacing him with Jesse King, not a problem. They basically brought in Jordan Hall to backfill for Jesse King when he was out a year ago. So they should be in great shape, and there's nothing to worry about there. Second place is Toronto. I think picking up Adam Jones in the summer is going to pay massive dividends, and their offense will take it up a notch. third, fourth, fifth, and just nothing clear cut for me. I like Buffalo to be in third. I think that they've had a rough go of it last year, but I don't see them having continual troubles. So they can right the ship. We'll see if the young stud Josh Byrne can come in and make the difference like they think he will. They also have Alex Bouquet, who took the New Westminster Salmon Bellies to the Mann Cup this summer. So they've got some good people. Callum Crawford, like they made moves to get better, and let's see them do that. New England ends up dropping out of the top three. They still have Sean Evans, who's always lethal, Kevin Crowley, and picked up Aaron Bold. But I think Toronto's made more strides, and I think Buffalo can find the motivation to be better. And that leaves Rochester at the bottom of the barrel in the East for me. I just don't see anything there, which is crazy to see when you think that they've got Matt Vince, who's typically one of the 2-3 best goalies in the league every year. They have Dan Dawson still leading the offense, but he's getting older. Paul Dawson's getting older. They're across the board. They're getting older and not picking up people who I recognize as being solid players. Like they picked up Billy D. Smith when Buffalo cut him loose. So they're getting older. Yeah. So moves like that aren't a guaranteed way to succeed in the run and gun league. So I'll move out west now. Up top for year upon year, the Saskatchewan Rush. Again, they've won 2 titles in a row, finished second last year. So they are the best team in the West, and they made some minor tweaks. I think picking up Evan Kirk was a brilliant move to get younger at goalie and maybe shake things up a little bit. So that'll be positive for them to keep them up top. I see Vancouver going second. They finished last year with a ton of momentum, bringing back most people that they had, and finally having some success winning at home and getting the crowds going. It'll be a nice little combination of things for people. Third place, last playoff team in the West for me, I ended up picking Colorado. Their defensive losses are pretty significant, but they still have Dylan Ward, who's the reigning goalie of the year, to take care of the net minding. Ryan Benesh should be a great addition to their offense on the left side there. And last, I have Calgary. Sometimes rebuilding takes a while. Last year, I don't think they were rebuilding until they realized too late that they were. This year, they're still working on it. They have a lot of young unknowns. They still have the greatest individual goal scorer in the league right now, I think, of Curtis Dixon. But that's one player. And while he can get 5 or 6 goals every night, if everybody else doesn't, then they got problems they got to work through. Graham, what are your picks for the standings this year?
Speaking of Calgary, I think they had more than one game last year where Curtis Dixon was on fire and did a great job, and nobody else did anything, and they end up losing, 10-7, and Dixon had 5 of those goals or 6 of those goals or some crazy thing.
Not a winning combination.
No. All right, so we'll start in East again. Maybe this is a homer pick, and maybe it's not, but I'm going to pick the Rock to finish first. They obviously made the playoffs last year. Didn't get by the Swarm, but nobody else did either. But they're getting Rob Hillier back, who had 113 or something points the previous year. He is apparently fully healthy again. And of course, adding Adam Jones will help as well. I think their offense will be good enough. They might rival Georgia as one of the better offenses in the league. Georgia, I did pick second. I think they'll drop a little bit, partially because they were so good last year. It's going to be hard to maintain that because they lost a lot of defensemen in this past year. I listed them all on one of my blog posts. Mitch Belisle retired. Liam Burns was dropped, I believe, to the practice roster. And then I think he was just released today. Jordan Hall, we mentioned, is out. Ethan O'Connor is injured. Chad Tutton is injured. Joel White is out. And they replaced all those guys. Oh, and Brody McDonald was traded as well. But they replaced all those back end guys with some rookies. And if the rookies pan out, then great. If they don't, then they could be in some trouble. But you may see them winning a bunch of 18 to 16 games because their firepower up front is still really good. So I have them finishing second. New England, I have finishing third. Rochester fourth and Buffalo fifth. And the Rochester and Buffalo, I flip-flopped a number of times before deciding on the final order here. Rochester had one of the lowest goals per game averages ever. I think they were like 10th or 11th worst in the history of the league last year. They scored 175 goals in 18 games or something. And with the second overall pick, they pick a defenseman. And maybe he's a outstanding defenseman and he will really help on the back end. But if you can't score goals, it don't matter. Out. I don't know if that's for the first week or the first month or the most of the season. They brought him back a little too early last year, and he played 5 minutes and tweaked his knee again, and he was done for the year. So there's no way they're letting that happen again. So they will wait till he's absolutely 100% fully ready to come back. But we have no idea when that is. So, yeah, too many question marks for Rochester. Buffalo had some defensive issues last year, and they let David Brock go. They let Billy D. Smith go. Alex Keto Hill has taken the season off. Apparently, they're moving Mark Stainhouse back to be more of a defensive transition guy, which we know he can do, and that will help.
That's what he spent the summer doing in Peterborough.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, having his veteran presence on the back end is certainly not a bad thing. And we'll see how Alex Bouquet handles being an everyday starter. Yeah, so too many question marks for me in Buffalo and Rochester. So I had them finishing fourth and fifth. In the West, yeah, you said it. Saskatchewan is a team to beat and has been for several years now. If Vancouver can continue the sort of momentum they had at the end of last year, like you said, I can see them doing really well this year. I think their success at the end of last season gave them a lot of confidence, and I think that will spill over into this year as well. In fact, it looks like I had my West is the same as yours. So I had Colorado third and Calgary fourth. And where did my list for Calgary go? I had one here. Westberg is out. He may or may not be back soon. His is a contract issue, so there's no injury problem there. You just have to get the contract signed, and he's back. Mike Carnegie is injured. Scott Carnegie is gone. Jeff Shatler is gone. Bob Snyder's on the practice list. And they have 4 rookies taking their place. Well, Vaughn Harris, I think, played 2 games with the Roughnecks last year, but he's effectively a rookie. Now, Zach Currier is supposed to be a great player. He was taken 3rd overall. He was expected to go 2nd overall. But he's a transition guy who may turn their transition into something awesome. But yeah, just too many big name, big performing players replaced by rookies there for my liking. So I had to put them in 4th place. So let's move on to our individual awards. We only did 4. I think in previous years we've done a bunch. We've done the Coach of the Year, and GM of the Year, and a bunch of them. So I think we cut it down a little bit this year. And again, I'll go over Melissa's first. For MVP, she had Lyle Thompson. Transition player, Chris Corbeil. Defender of the Year, she had Brett Midsky. And Goalie of the Year, Dylan Ward. And I don't have the same players picked, but I can't really argue with any of those. They're all excellent picks. And Tyler, who did you have for these guys?
Sure. My MVP pick ends up going to Mark Matthews. It's hard to repeat as MVP. I still think Lyle Thompson's amazing. I haven't seen any reason he'll slow down. He's only going to get better. But Mark Matthews was a runner-up last year along with Corey Small, and he can be great. And this year, he is the number one. He doesn't have to split time with Adam Jones. And so I think you even see maybe a little bump in point production. And that could put him over the top for winning that MVP award. Transition player for me, Justin Salt. It was his award last year. For some reason, it wasn't given to him. And I think there'll be renewed focus on that and people actually watching the player that was outcried for, and he'll be recognized for his great play and effort. Defender. This is my hardest one to pick. There's a lot of great defenders in the league everywhere. And I ended up going back to who is consistently the greatest individual defender, the biggest guy you don't want to go against daily and deal with. And I'm going to go with Kyle Rubish and see he steps back into his role as the best, his role of being recognized as the best individual defender in the league. Finally, goalie of the year. Another tough one. I think Dylan Ward is phenomenal. Very deserving last year. But I'm going to go with Evan Kirk. And I think having him step in front of the rush defense will actually drive his numbers down a smidge, make him look a little better, give him a little more confidence, knowing he can play in that system, and be selected as goalie of the year because of it. Who are your picks, Graham?
All right. I'm going to agree with Melissa on MVP and go with Lyle Thompson. I think I put Mark Matthews as my number 2 pick for MVP, and that's probably like the 5th straight year I've put Matthews as number 2. I kind of feel bad for him because he's such an outstanding player, but he's always just slightly shy of what somebody else has done.
Always a bridesmaid
each year. So I'm gonna exactly. So I'm gonna go with Lyle Thompson just because he does everything. I looked over some of the numbers and I don't have them handy, but so I won't spout off any actual numbers. But in terms of goals and assists and things like shots on goal, he was roughly on par with Matthews. But I think his loose balls were about double. What else was there? Was something else. He had fewer penalty minutes, and I think caused turnovers. Thompson was by far the highest of all the forwards, and he even took like 40 or 50 face-offs in one half of those. So I mean, he just does everything. So I'm going to go with Thompson. Transition player, I'm with you. Justin Salt should have won it last year, and yeah, like you said, eyes are going to be on him this year. And so I'm going to go with Salt. Defender of the year, I'm going to go with my namesake, Graham Hossack. May not have actually been named after me, but I'm going to go with that anyway. On the Nighthawks, he's kind of their defensive leader now, even though he's 25 or 26 or some crazy thing. Just a solid player, big guy, strong guy, smart, just always knows where he needs to be. And I don't tend to watch defenders an awful lot. I tend to watch where the ball is, and so I'm always watching the forwards. But now and again, I kind of force myself, okay, pay attention to what the defenders are doing. And that's when you think, wow, this Rubish guy, who you don't hear his name on the broadcasts all that often, really knows what he's doing. And you see the same thing. I see the same thing with Graham Hossack. He's just one of those guys that you don't hear often, and as a defender, you kind of don't want to hear your name often because it usually means that you were the one who allowed the guy to score. Goalie of the year. This one was hard. I swapped between Dylan Ward and Nick Rose, though I can see Evan Kirk having a good year as well. So I went with Nick Rose, probably another homer pick. But Rose has been improving sort of a little bit each year for the last couple of years. And I think this is the year he's going to put it all together and be goalie of the year. Okay, so Tyler, you listed Rookie of the Year as a potential 5th category, but none of us filled it in. What do you think?
Well, it's a tough one because we don't have history to see these kids growing up where they maybe not shown junior A games on the internet or even people talking about them. But but this year we've got the number 1 overall pick, the Josh Byrne kid. He was the MLL Rookie of the Year, and you watch him play ball. He's just a big guy, totally comfortable. He has all the stick tricks figured out. He looks like a young John Grant Jr. And that is as far as like his stick wizardry and what he's comfortable doing when he's out there. And that's a good sign. That's a player who has the potential to do things. So for me, this year I do have a clear Rookie of the Year choice that I would put on the record right now and say that's Josh Byrne.
Yeah, I had to do my picks for the Isle Indoor list, which I imagine should be coming out this week. And I picked Josh Byrne as well. Like you said, he's been playing against people of NLL caliber already for a year and proven that he can do it. And I think he'll fit in quite nicely on the Bandits. He's not. I don't imagine his game is the same as Ryan Benesh, but he's kind of replacing him on the Bandits' left side. And with guys like Callum Crawford and Dane Smith on the other side, they could put up a lot of numbers over there. So that should be fun to watch.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go over our game picks. There's 4 games this weekend. I think there's 2 on Friday and 2 on Saturday, or is it 3 and 1? I can't remember. But 4 games, so I guess I'll begin. Actually, I guess we'll begin with Melissa's again, same as the previous ones. So we have Georgia, New England, and Melissa went with Georgia. Toronto was playing in Buffalo on Friday night, and she went with the Bandits. Colorado and Vancouver, she went with Colorado. And Calgary and Rochester, and she went with Calgary. So we'll continue with the same order as before. So Tyler, you are next.
Right. First game there, Georgia at Buffalo. I think the league was generous to give Georgia one little road game there. Or at least I don't know what their second and third games are, but at least their first game's on the road just in case they have a stinker getting warmed up for the season. They don't come home and have a huge celebration about winning a title and then have a bad game. So they can, if needed, get that out of the way in New England. But I don't expect that to happen, and I picked Georgia to win. Toronto at Buffalo, I think is my hardest. No, it was a very tough pick. It was the hardest one of the week. But I'm going to go ahead and pick Buffalo at home just because they're home. So they get just a little bit of a boost off the big crowd there. And that's the only reason I think it's just the home crowd's worth a couple goals. And so it'll be a tight game. Usually it's between those two, and I'm excited to see what happens. Last game, Friday night, Colorado at Vancouver. Colorado came in last May. Stealth's first home playoff game ever in Langley and beat them. So the Stealth have had this circled on their calendar since the day that the schedule was released. And they're very excited to come out and win this game. But I'm picking Colorado to win the game because despite Colorado missing defenders, the Stealth during the preseason were missing their offense. So most weekends, Joel McCready, Reese Dutch weren't playing. Logan Schuss didn't travel to Calgary for one of the preseason games. So they haven't had time to get in sync or even prove that they're healthy. And if the offense isn't scoring goals, or I don't know that they are, then I can't pick them to win. I hope they do. But having Dutch, McCready, and Schuss miss time during the preseason, I'm very worried that they're not ready to go. So I can't pick them to win that game yet. And finally, Calgary at Rochester. Pick Calgary to be the last team in the West, but it doesn't mean they're the worst team in the league because I got them ahead of Rochester. So if you were to put them all stacked 1 through 9. So I think Calgary can go into Rochester, even though it's a long trip to start the season, and get a W. So I pick Calgary to win that one. Who are your picks, Graham?
All right. I guess what I did was basically go over my standing predictions and kind of ordered them that way. I had Georgia higher than New England, so I picked Georgia to win. Toronto higher than Buffalo, so I picked Toronto to win. Colorado and Vancouver, I picked Vancouver for that one, and I went with Calgary over Rochester. That one was interdivisional, so that was weighing the fourth place in one division versus the fourth place in the other division. But as I said before, with Rochester, I'm not super confident in Rochester's offense this year. So until they prove me otherwise, I'm going to go with Calgary on that one. Colorado Vancouver was a tough one as well. I didn't think about the fact that I'm not sure Dutch played in any of the games. I think Corey Small did, and I know Logan Schuss missed at least one or two as well. So, like you said, they may be having some. They may have some early season chemistry issues. I don't think chemistry was a big problem with them last year, but it's just the fact that it's the beginning of the season, and at least some of them haven't played together. I know Dutchie and Small played together in Victoria over summer. But I went with Vancouver on that one. So I guess we're all in agreement with Georgia and Calgary, and the others are all kind of mixed up. So I guess that will do it, unless there was anything else that you wanted to mention before we go, Tyler?
No, just that, as I said before, we made it. We survived another off season. It's a month earlier, but we get to watch games this weekend.
Yes, we do. I'm looking forward to Friday night, and I imagine everybody listening to this show is as well. And so I guess that'll do it. We will be back next, hopefully Sunday night, and Sunday nights throughout the season. If you have questions or comments for us, make sure you hit us up on Twitter at Lax Podcast, or on our Facebook page, Addicted to Lacrosse, or feedback at addictedtolacrosse.com. You can reach us through email. And comments and questions and such will be addressed on the show, which we're looking forward to. So that should be fun. So that'll do it. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and the absent Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.